Today is a great day. As I said, it's a special Tuesday because we shall be having part 2 of our great topic that we started on Tuesday last week, talking about turning job seekers to job creators. Thank you, SK, for joining us. And now, Maggie, I want to stop sharing my screen, and I will give you an opportunity to go ahead and share your screen as you give us an introduction of the topic for today. Karibu sana. I am recording this session. As the instructions said, please share with us your email if we do not have it yet in our record. And we shall be happy to share with you the recording after we edit the audio. Asante sana, Maggie, over to you.
Excellent, excellent. So good evening, everyone. It's very exciting to be, having conversations with all of you. And I'm so glad that you made it on time. I know a few people logged in earlier than the 7:30. So we thank God that we are live and we can do this. So before we start, I would kindly ask for a volunteer. If not, I will pray myself. Because God is the giver of all wisdom. Whatever SK will be sharing with us, the good nuggets. Can I get a volunteer? If not, I will just go ahead and pray. I like a volunteer.
I can pray.
Oh, awesome. We have 2 volunteers. Abraham? Is that Abraham?
Yes, it is.
Excellent. Kindly go ahead.
Father, we come before you. We want to thank you for this evening you've given unto us across the world, different people tuning in from different places. Thank you for the session that we'll have today of entrepreneurship and discussions and empowerment. We thank you for the platform that you've given unto us. Thank you for our speakers that you have lined up for us today. And we thank you, Lord, because of the wisdom that will be imparted upon us and in us today. And we pray, God, that we'll utilize it with kingdom principles, kingdom mindsets, kingdom energy, and may you avail to us kingdom opportunities so that we can be able to influence our various environments. We thank you and we worship you. In Jesus' mighty name, we pray, believe, and we trust. Amen, amen, and amen.
Amen and amen and amen. That's amazing. Thank you. Thank you so much for volunteering. So I'll go straight into I don't know if you can see my screen, I hope. Hold on.
Yes, we can.
Resume. Hold on. You can see now?
We can see your screen. Go ahead.
Excellent. So I'll go ahead before I introduce, because today we want to give SK a good chance to share his story, because it's so deep, it's so amazing, it's Kenyan, it's a Kenyan beautiful story. And so before I introduce SK, I really want you guys to just walk with me for like 5 minutes. Entrepreneurship is very close to my heart. Some of you that know me, perhaps I should mention that my day job that I really adore, and I thank God for putting me in the position that He's put me. I'm in charge of youth banking and women banking at State Bank of Mauritius. So, and as much as I'm employed, I have a daytime job. I am very passionate about entrepreneurship, and this is why. I'll go very quickly about these slides, and because every single day in my office, I receive so many resumes, very good resumes, some even better than mine, very educated, very, very good youth. And some are actually from Harvard, and you find that unemployment rate remains, should I call it a cancer in our country. And as some of you know, right now what has happened, the new world we are living in, the COVID-19 world, and even after COVID, you find that many jobs have been lost, yeah? Many people have lost jobs. Some of us are still working, but I'm very cognizant of the fact that there are so many youths that are looking for jobs. Today we had a session with Kenya Bankers Association, and one of the speakers there was Giuliani, and he was painting a picture of how many, in the informal sector, it's even worse, So back to the story of unemployment. I mentor a lot of people who are starting out businesses. And in my journey of mentorship, I realized that the only way we can change the landscape of our country and our future is obviously to change the mindset from job seekers to job creators. We need to be the providers of solutions ourselves. So without going so much into the details, right now there are so many of us who are chilling at home, of course with the lockdown globally. And by the way, guys, do not assume that this is just happening in Kenya. It's a global problem. In my previous life, I started a diaspora desk at a different bank. And I remember so many of these Kenyans who are working abroad, they are home. Remember somewhere like Italy, some of these guys are home and they have no choice. You're sitting in an apartment, you're chilling at home, you even wonder, I wish I was home, at least I could walk around the shamba or walk around the estate. Anyway, you get the point. So what we are saying now is that instead of us, for us as leaders, we must start now. Because if not us, if we do not start changing this mindset of our youth, if not us, who will? And if not now, who and when? Yeah? So going straight to the second slide, as you can see, these numbers, I actually got them from the, Kenya National Bureau standards and other websites. It's the same thing. 70% of our youths are jobless. So for how long can we wait, guys? And this is what drove this conversation and why we have the speaker tonight. I know we had SKI last week and it was awesome. So these statistics, I think as much as many articles have been written about unemployment, but for how long can we sing about unemployment? Can we, our desire as the, Mentors Parlour is that we can change the narrative. Yeah, we can be part of changing the narrative. Yeah, because the numbers we have, but what are we doing about them as a country? And this slide actually speaks to the census that was done last year. Still the same numbers. Yeah, the sources are there. I can share the slides after. Our youth are very innovative, and this is actually something that keeps me awake at night. For me, I ask myself as a leader, what is my contribution to this unemployment? What is my contribution to the new jobs coming up? How can we spur more new entrepreneurs, and especially our youth, because they are very brilliant minds. Second, the next slide is for me, if you ask me, in my world, coming together is a beginning. And keeping together is a progress, but the working together, all of us contributing. And by the way, I urge all the leaders. I know we have some, not just entrepreneurs in the call, but we have very good leaders that are making an impact in the space. But you see, for us, working together is the solution to this problem. One of the things that I want to highlight in Kenya, from some of you know that I was a banker. I was an investment banker for 10 years in Boston, Massachusetts. And one of the things I find that this is not a Kenyan problem. We have a global problem. We do not have enough mentorship and coaching for new entrepreneurs at the early stage when they are starting. And by the way, as you know, many institutions even shy away from startups. So these are some of the problems, one of the issues, and why we started these conversations here. Because we want SK Blue, for example, to be able to tell these entrepreneurs, this is how I started. I made some mistakes, but guess what? I have made it. Yeah, these are the stories we want to. We don't want to just be reading about, I give this global example because all of us know it's Steve Jobs who started Apple. We want more entrepreneurs that are coming from right here in Kenya. Buy Kenya, build Kenya, our very own. Again, our schools also don't teach a lot of practical skills. I remember in February, I was in Machakos County. We had a summit there with the Machakos County, officials. And the governor gave an example, by the way, very funny. This caught my eye. He said that when he was building the facility that he built the other day, I think some of you have followed, yeah? He was looking for the guys, the fundis, yeah? And funny enough, he could not find enough. So he walked down the street and he found that there were very many people sitting on the roadside, and he asked them, do you know how to do carpentry? Most of them were saying no. And for me, it was shocking to say that seriously, there are many people that probably, there's a skill set that probably our schools also, as we continue to engage with them, there are certain practical skill sets that are missing, even as we are right now, causing even more unemployment. But the others, perhaps you guys know, there's also the scarcity mentality. Non-inclusive policy implementation. And that's why us youth guys, we need our voice in these decision-making tables. Also the job-seeking mentality. This is something, I think it's the first problem statement that we have. We need our youth to come out of school, come out of colleges and these learning institutions with a mindset that, yes, they can create these jobs. They can be job creators as opposed to job seekers. One of my beautiful, my favorite, one of my sayings a quote that I like quoting many times, almost every day, is JFK Kennedy. Before he passed, he used to ask fellow Americans, my fellow citizens. I've tweaked it to the Kenyan version. So I'm asking us guys as leaders and youth of this nation, my fellow citizens, especially my youth, ask not what Kenya can do for you, but instead ask what you yourself can do for your beautiful country, especially through job creation. And if you ask me, COVID happened and we've moved on very swiftly. I know I have a lot of hope with this, crisis. But you know what? Abraham Lincoln was always right in many ways, because he used to say, the best way to predict the future is simply create it yourself. And I think the best time to create the future is now. Quickly, as I finish, I want to urge, I think we know all these faces, and one of my favorite ones is, we know, right here at home, Wangari Maathai. Imagine the stuff Wangari Maathai had to go through. Somebody has to start this movement of, job creators as opposed to job seeking. And I believe the time is now. If we can only change our mindset, we can be the Nelson Mandela. He's another, unbelievable. I don't think any of us would have done even close to what Nelson Mandela, staying all those years in jail for freedom. I'm challenging you guys to do this. I know it's possible we can do this. And lastly, for me, if you ask me, how will the future look like in the new mindset? If we change our mindset, our futures, I don't know if you can see the little girl on the left. Some of you, I know, I don't know if the mother is on the call, but I'm so proud of this little girl. She believes that, at her very early age, she got the inspiration that she can be the Wangari Maathai. And she's doing a lot of planting trees. So what I'm saying is, let the future of our country, even these young girls you see here, this can be our school system, whereby someone in primary school is already thinking of an idea that they can innovate. Lastly, I'm very proud of this. I think you guys have seen this. Recently, we've had a few innovations coming out of Kenya, and this is what the conversation tonight is all about. Lastly, as I finish, please guys, the good stuff you learned tonight, I want to kindly and humbly urge you. One of the scarcity mentality that is killing us as young people and as a country is the scarcity, share with someone else. Make some notes, make the good notes, make a notation of how SK, started the business, and whatever you learned tonight, please share with someone else. Benefit another fellow Kenyans. Right now, social distancing is an issue, but someone in America has logged in and will be able to listen. Someone else in Dubai is logged on. So really, guys, there's no excuse for why we cannot do this as a country. And with those few remarks, I would want to end with a quote that a lot of us have many ideas. I know I do. A lot of us have so many ideas, and Les Brown was very quick to say that the richest place, on earth is actually the graveyard, which is very ironic. And a lot of us have so many ideas. We have business ideas. We just need a little help. Let our ideas not end up in the graveyard, but let's make a deliberate effort to make a change. So without further ado, if Esther, you can stop. Can I stop the share? I think I'm back on now. Without further ado, I do not want to spend or waste another minute before I bring you this, what should I call him? If I read his bio, I think some of you might even, I don't even know. I tried reading your bio, SK. Are you there? I tried reading your bio last week, and I don't think I can even finish. So without any further ado, I want to invite our very own guest speaker, our own very own Kenyan, our very own creative guru, and a businessman that has turned a businessman. SK, we want to welcome you. If we were in a physical setting, we would be clapping for you, but we want to welcome you so that you can share your story, because I know it will inspire someone to actually get started. So please feel free, welcome over, and I would want you to start with where we left off last week. And for the sake of the people who were not there last week, SK shared how, you know, he was a musician, gospel artist for that matter. Let's just make it, let's be very clear. And what SK, his journey is quite amazing, because it's not always been a very smooth journey. He's had a few setbacks here and there. SK, perhaps for the sake of our audience, perhaps you can start with how you got a record deal and you moved to America at some point, and I don't know what happened, and then guess what? You came back, and you came back with some different mindset. You became a businessman, right?
Correct.
So over to you.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Maggie. I hope you can hear me.
Awesome. Yes, I can hear you.
Great. Very nice. I'm excited to be here, indeed. For those ones who are not here last week and are joining, karibuni sana. I would want to start right where Maggie has mentioned. But just to paraphrase, it's indeed important for me to mention an overview. Born in a pastor's house, my dad basically is a bishop, and being born in a pastor's house, a few things are natural. Number one is singing before the preacher goes up. That is something that we used to do a lot. Number two is after the preacher goes up, we used to go down and basically get on the camera and record the preacher. Before a crusade, it was our job to be able to go set up the speakers, put everything together. And the interesting thing about that part of my story is that I fell in love with music, number one. And number two, I fell in love with media because it was right there. We were the ones taking pictures and doing the videos. And so I didn't know. And there's a principle that we normally teach and speak of, traveling from the future. Traveling from the future is an interesting concept. And we say, if he's the Alpha and Omega, sometimes we are trying to travel to the future, but yet guess all through the way. But if he's Omega as well, why can't we just travel from the future? And the interesting thing is that sometimes we do travel from the future without our own knowledge. We start from the end, then go to the beginning. And someone said, unless you start and complete something in your head, don't start it on the ground, because completing it in your head allows you to travel from the end. And it's an interesting thing, because you can give up in life, whatever it is that you're doing, unless your why is bigger than your what. Yeah. So traveling from the future allows you to do that. And this, interestingly, looking in retrospect, I'm looking at coming into a space where I was a participant in media, and it came from back then. Then as well, I was a musician, but it came from back then. A seed was planted without my knowledge. Probably I would say that God allowed me to travel from the future. And now my why is built up in a point where I was trained on something that I didn't know I was getting trained to do. And remember that as well. My dad had a tractor, for the people who were not there last week. And in primary school, my brother and I had to take the tractor over the holidays and go till lands. My brother was older, so he was taller, he was driving it. And I was the guy who was going knocking on doors and selling, pitching this tractor plowing service that we were to offer as young kids. And basically would collect the money, basically take it to my dad at the end of the day. As I mentioned last week as well, interestingly, he was only giving us fuel for 1 way. And we had to make sure we work, otherwise we don't come home. So we used to work, get some money, fuel the tractor, and come back home. So fast forward that story to where Maggie queued, yeah? And at some point as a musician, I had grown as a musician slowly by slowly through challenges. My first challenge was it was so expensive to create, to record songs. It was so expensive for me to be able to produce music. So the best I would do at that particular point was learn a principle that says, instead of competing, create. And at that point, we basically started by borrowing a software called Fruity Loops One. That's the most basic production software. And the intention of that was basically to be able to teach ourselves. I want to throw in a principle as I tell the story. There's a principle that I want to exhibit. Education has been changing, and there are two sets of education. There's traditional education and there's alternative education. I want to highlight the power of both as we do this conversation. And the interesting thing is traditional education is learning what's changed. Yeah? Learning what's changed is interesting because they say the further forward you want to see, the further backward you ought to look. Or the further backwards you look, the further forward you see. So traditional education helps us to do that. But traditional education does not help us to basically thrive in an economic environment because it gives us something about the past. So they say history is, the vision behind is 2020 is clear. We can say, we can tell what happened yesterday because we saw yesterday. But we are not so clear to tell what will happen tomorrow because we have not been taught to think that way. Nonetheless, alternative education, which like this forum is part of alternative education, is learning as things change. Learning as things change is a whole different game altogether because it brings us to a point of taking up the skills of the future. The skills of the past used to be IQ. IQ was a big thing. Then it wasn't enough. So we had to go to emotional quotient, learning how to relate as opposed to just wanting to transact. Then now crisis is bringing us to AQ, adaptability quotient. And this is an interesting thing because we just must adapt. And unless we adapt, we die. They say, evolve or die. So when you're looking at it from that point of view, that brings a canvas of basically where I was coming from as I was now in the music space, where I had to pull alternative education just to be able to understand how it works. And I had a partner, an amazing partner called Michelle Olom, a gentleman that we've gone through quite a bit together. And the interesting part about it is we borrowed a software and we needed to find a computer. At first, we went around cyber cafes, and we tried to say, could we claim and at least get a session to use the computers that are there? No one would touch us. So as mentioned last week, so he was working as a house help for one of our friends. And the friend miraculously bought a computer. And basically, that was our way out. So we put the software in the computer, learned how to produce the music, and from there, the rest was ideally history. So moving on into now music production, the first song that we did in that computer, because as we were producing on the computer, the owner of the computer one day caught us So it's called Mr. Googs. And nowadays it's called Pastor Googs. Very interesting how life changes. So Mr. Googs came in one day and found us. Yeah, so the computer was on his bed. I don't know why people used to keep computers on at the feet of their beds. I think it's something about playing games usiku and things like that. Nonetheless,
Safety.
it was right there for safety.
It was a precious commodity.
Yeah, so you touch it with your leg just to know it's still there. So yeah, it was on his bed and we were working on it. I don't know why he came back, but he came back and found us there, and we tried to plead with him, and we told him, hey, you see, you understand music and you appreciate, and we pleaded and said, why don't you take probably one of the tracks and do with one of us? So we had a team, and the team that we used to live together in a store, we had to give ourselves a name, because all we knew was God at that point. And we were trying to say, okay, for us to get opportunities, we need to start relating with people. We need to socialize. How will they know we have something to offer unless we meet them? And we tried to think, how do we get people to meet us so that we tell them that we are gifted and we can get some service done to them? The only way, probably from a pastor's kid, was my idea to them was, guys, let's do a fellowship banner. So, okay, fellowship, it's a fellowship at Saidiaje. Let's do a fellowship. When they come to the fellowship, then we get an opportunity to give testimonials. We tell them that we can actually be of value to them. So we started the fellowship. But people used to come once, then they never came again. So we kept asking them, how come you never come to our fellowship? And people used to say, fellowship haina chakula, haina chai, hii ni kambi. So, purely because of that.
SK, I have to interrupt you. How old were you this time? You were such a hustler at a very early age. It would help to know, how old were you at this Mr. Googs and stealing computers and borrowing and amazing?
I was sent away from home at 17. So around about now, I was about 18, 19, because I started my first business at 19.
Wow.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. So yeah, I was round about there. But at that particular time, you have to do all you have to do because you have no fallback. You can't go home. You've been sent from home. So just do what you have to do. And as mentioned last week, my dad used to tell us a few things. One thing was, he used to say, if your dream is not worth dying for, it's not worth living for. That's number one. The second thing that he used to tell us was, them that see the invisible can do the impossible.
Wow.
And that was powerful. That's what we had to run with, because you basically have to go out there and just try to do what you can do. So at this time when we did that song and it worked, so a few of us now started coming out. I remember one guy who used to come to the fellowship. I don't know why he kept coming back, but probably he didn't mind that we didn't have anything to serve. And he was called Ndambuki. And yeah, so he kept coming back, and we all became so good friends. And so when the fellowship did not work, we had now to switch to saying, the fellowship will not work, let's go to the local church and offer our services to serve there. And basically, yeah, Assemblies of God Buruburu accepted us.
You're kidding.
And we, yeah,
that's a good church.
That's a good chat. So
SK, you bring, so sorry, I'll keep interjecting because some things you're bringing out are very deep. That means you volunteered, right?
Yes,
Awesome.
we did.
So volunteer.
Because no one would come. Yeah, no one would come to our fellowship. It was called Kambi. So
Awesome.
so we named ourselves Kambi Cristo as a musical group, and and that was the title that we were using. So as Kambi Cristo, we went to KAG and spoke to KAG. Pastor Pius Tembu accepted, but he said the ones that have dreadlocks, nyinyi kwanza kaeni kando. The ones that are neatly dressed. So Churchill and Rafton were the ones who were a bit neat. So they were allowed to be. So Churchill was trying to explain to the pastor that for me, I want to do comedy and to make people laugh. So the pastor was kept asking him, like a clown, like for babies, like for birthdays, like a clown for birthdays. And he was trying to tell him, no, comedy, comedy. Okay, he didn't get it. So they ended up being sent to Sunday school. So for about 7 years, Churchill and Rafton were Sunday school teachers at Assemblies of God. Yeah. So the rest of
Amazing.
us were, yeah. So the
The
rest of
humble
us were
beginnings, huh? Talk about
humble
humble beginnings.
beginnings. Yeah. Whoever thought? So now, Rafton and myself were there for in this whole thing. Where one day we went to this cyber and we just started filling up positions for awards. And without our knowledge, we just kept doing it. We didn't know whether we would be received, accepted, or things like that. So one day we get an email, and it says that Rafton and SK have been nominated for American Gospel Music Awards.
What?
So,
Like what?
so yeah, that was crazy.
Yeah.
So okay, we are like, Allah, Maju. Sasa hata Maju anatuita, tutatoa wapi fair? So we didn't really think much of it, because we were thinking it's so ambitious. How do you even start? But we kept talking about it, praying about it, and Kambi Cristo guys kept pushing us and telling us, and then him represent Kambi. So we basically decided, okay, then we need to go look for visas. So we didn't have anything, just the invitation. Of course, we didn't have anything to show about the bank accounts and all. So what we did, we looked for all the newspapers that had written about us. So we cut all the cuttings on the newspapers. And we spoke to the pastor. We said, just in case they call you, man, just throw in a good word. And we basically went to the embassy. The interesting thing is that we go to the embassy, we have nothing. And we go to the embassy and they call us up and they say, okay, you guys, so we just had to do what we had to do. So you guys, who are you guys? We said we're musicians representing the Kenya industry. We wanted to go basically to be able to participate in this particular award ceremony. So they asked us, just like a joke, why would we let you go? We said, we will perform at the embassy. If you let us go, we will sing. Okay, we didn't think they would let us sing. So they told us sing at the embassy. So we sang. We sang. So we started by singing Mwikulu. Then we sang everything we could sing. and yeah, amazingly, they stamped our passports and we were ready to leave.
Wow.
The only problem is that we just didn't have fare. We didn't have tickets. We didn't know how to get the tickets. So yeah. At that particular point, we were called. We were called in by Teresia Wairimu at Faith Evangelistic Ministry. So she told us, I heard about this thing that you guys have been nominated. You're going to the States. You sang at the embassy. So when are you leaving? We told her, if only we had fare, man. we would be willing to go. So yeah, so that's basically how Rafton got his fare. I got piece of my fare, and yeah, we were ready to go. So I needed to fill up my piece. So I called my dad. I told him, hey, this is how it's going, and I've been nominated for this thing. So we were like, it's been a while since I heard from you. It had been a few years actually since I went home. So I met my dad again for the first time just before I left. And yeah, so I met him, spoke about it, and he topped up a little fare that was remaining, off to go. So I remember Afton went without anything. So all he had was a paper bag full of tapes. And we were asking each other, what about tapes? That's kweli. Yeah, is there a market a market for tapes?
Oh my God.
So he had
Crazy.
these trash bags, these black ones. So he just put all our tapes in that bag, and off he left. So he took one. We had different flights. We said, "What Nambele, man?" So and that's how we got ourselves on the other side. So we get ourselves on the other side, and as well at the event itself, we knew that no one knows us. So even if people were to vote, no one would really vote. So we went and spoke to the organizer and said, we're guys from Kenya, and we know we are not on your performance roster, but we're willing to perform for free. When's the last time you had African performers here? Just allow us to get on stage and do our performance. So we knew if they let us perform, we'll kill it. We'll do all we can, because no one knew us, so no one would actually vote for us. So yeah, he said, as long as I'm not paying you, he said, no worries, we'll do it. So they gave us an opportunity. We sang. And yeah, after the award, we were announced as winners. And the interesting thing is, when that was through, we now got a lot of people now calling us into their tables. Different companies, different labels had tables. And Rafton was called on one, I was called on a different one. So I was called on a table by this label, and this label was very keen to explore signing me as their artist. And as well, Rafton. So we parted ways that night. So Rafton went to a different state, and I went to Florida.
What state did you go to? You should tell us. Some of these guys who are listening in are from Uko, those sides, my former place. So
Florida.
wow, just like that, you parted ways, and you're signing a deal.
We parted ways. Yeah, so you go, you basically go through everything with them, orientation, things like that. So we parted ways. So all I remember, we were telling each other is God mbele. Wherever you go, I don't even know where you're going. You don't know where God mbele, the other side. And that's the last time I saw Raf. The next time I saw him was in Kenya.
What?
Yeah, and gone.
But
so
you guys were such risk takers. I must commend you. Like, was this is this a gift you were born with, or you were just daredevils in your own right?
We were just surviving. We're trying not to die. Yeah. Sometimes when an option is taken from you, you just have now to think. Your mind opens. You just have to innovate literally for survival. At that point, you just look at it and say, unless God comes, nothing else can work. And there's something about leaning on God when you don't have an option. Yeah. You lean on him knowing either God you come or you come. It's like that story of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Yeah, God will come and save us. But even if he doesn't, it is what it is. Yeah. We put ourselves his hands. So yeah, so I went one direction. So it was interesting. So because when I went to that side, I explained to this label that I'm a gospel artist. I took them through my vision. The intention is to be able to transform lives and, you know, speak about kingdom, even through economics. So we call it kingdom economics. And that was the essence of my stay with them. But so after orientation, they said, you see, we are a business and taking you up for this, the best we can do is take you up as a secular artist. Yeah. So, and change your name, be a secular artist, and we sign you for $3 million. So that was tough. You can imagine you're coming from Eastlands. You're trying to think about this thing and you're being told $3 million. You go try calculate it again, then you see that it's conditional. They said, and the only condition we have is that you have to be a secular artist. So I had highs that were so high, at the same time lows that were so low. And I remember at that particular point, just trying to pray, just trying to read, and all that would ring in my head was, choose ye this day whom you will serve. Yeah.
Unbelievable.
That was tough.
A
Yeah,
very
that was
tough
tough.
choice. Very tough
Yeah.
choice. And being that young, how old were you at this point? Being that young.
Yeah, at this point I was 24. I was turning 24.
And you're seeing all these dollars and you've just come straight from Kenya and you're like, okay, you know, who do I choose?
Yeah, so I'm trying to think about, I'm trying to throw scriptures to it, trying to justify it. It just didn't work. I lost peace completely. So I tried to call a few people, just inquire. And people were telling me, take the money, repent later. So, so that was very, very tough. So I didn't get to sign it, but now not signing it as well was tricky, because I can't have lived with these guys for so long, working on all these things. Then much later, I tell them that I'm not signing, because all along I've been telling them I'm gospel. Then months later, that's like 7 months later, they're saying we've changed our mind. We want to go secular because that's where the money is.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I had to tell them that, why don't you allow me to go visit family? So I had my sister in ATL in Atlanta. So I said, why don't you just allow me to go visit my family, celebrate these milestones? Then with that, I should be able to as well respond to this thought that you've given me. Because at that particular point, I was actually thinking, if I tell these guys I won't sign, I may not go home. I may just, who knows? Yeah. Because when they saw I'm dragging my feet now, there were all those conversations of, you need to give us your passport. So I was like, okay. Unless I leave somehow amicably, who knows? This thing may be violent or something. So I just had to be as calm as I can and as wise as I can. So unfortunately, yeah, I left everything I had at that particular point. I left it because I was living with them literally. So I got to a TL, then you know that thing they say, the spirit will tell you what to do. You may not have words, but the spirit will give you words to speak. So I'm on that other side, and I'm telling them, okay, I've arrived, I've met my family, it's good. Nonetheless, I have to give you bad news. Bad news is that I just can't go secular. I'm gospel. Unless we do gospel, I can't. I told you guys that, yeah, my calling is pretty much a ministry. Yeah. My dad is a bishop in Kenya, and he knows I'm the extension of his ministry even though I'm doing it in a different capacity. I may not start a church, but the ministry I carry is through my element of communication. And at this stage, my communication is through my music. And I can't change. That was tough. That was very tough. And of course, they were disappointed, but what to do? So now I had now to plan to just come back home. But that particular period of being in that element gave me a lot of value for Africa. Now that's when you value home. You're like, I'm all away here, and I'm telling you, I would give anything to go home now. But yet,
Yeah.
yeah.
And speaking of that, SK, you know, people wonder why some of us come back home. My story was different, but I think this is very important because some people might never have heard about this story. Just to know that Kenya is actually one of the best continents. As much as we have many issues, it's still the best place to be at. When I resigned my job, I remember people asking, "What? You're going back to the jungle? Like, are you mad?" You know.
Yeah.
So yeah, continue. But it's amazing, even your guts to come back home, and kind of God made a way.
Yeah. At that particular time, I remember I couldn't wait to go home. You know, when I don't know what happens, but when you're away and you're pressed to the wall, your eyes open yet again, and you're like, wow, the things we can do in Kenya, the things Africa needs, the things we can be able to explore and exploit, things I never saw when I was back home. And now it was time now to go back home and do these things. I was so on fire to go back home, even though I just didn't have anything. I left everything in Florida. And at this time, I'm looking at things and I'm thinking, wow, how do I go home? Now I get it. I get it how difficult it is when people are in diaspora coming home and you're thinking, okay, I have nothing. What am I going to take home? What will I say I've been doing all this time? And at that point, I contended with it and I said, okay, you know what? It is what it is, man. And that's as well where the principle, they can take your fruit, but they cannot take your fruitfulness, was as well strongly reinforced. That,
Amen.
yeah, that my fruitfulness is inside of me. And therefore, all I need to do is go home and be fruitful equally. So yeah, eventually I came back home. I remember coming back home. I had nothing. So coming back home, so I told my siblings. So my siblings, I told them I'm coming. So which date? Ndakam to tulieni ndatokea. So I checked in, and just checked in like that. So guys are asking, why are your bags? What bags? Nisina kitu. I'm back. So that was difficult because you can imagine the anticipation. Week one, people are thinking, okay, you may be tired. Probably you'll open bags and give us the goodies next week.
Yeah, no. But
Guys
SK, you know, SK, I love that you are honest. Yeah, you are honest from get-go, and I think it's a gift from God. So that fruitfulness, right?
Yeah. So I just had to tell my family, Miss Nakitu, I'm home, but we'll create from where we create. And that's where we started. We started creating. And I was so on fire. And this particular time now, I was able to see how businesses are created. I was able to see how different things are packaged. I was able to see how business, as opposed to the only thing I knew at that point was music. At this time, I was able to get to understand the business element of things. And at that particular point, therefore, we came back and started production all over again. So my partner was still there. So we started from where we left. And this time we were on fire. I was telling him we can get on TV, we can do music videos. So he was thinking, where are you getting all these ideas from? that's basically how we crossed over from music production into TV production. But we moved into TV production purely because of need, because people would not play our music. And we realized the same principle. Instead of competing, create. From music production to TV production, then we realized, as mentioned last week, that as well, people are not getting paid in time. So we had to create a lending house. After the lending house, now that's when we realized the need is bigger. And the essence of my calling is transformation. And the gifting that I have is the gifting of communicating. And my format of communication is through creation. At first, I was communicating through creating music, then communicated through creating content, then started now communicating through creating businesses. And at the moment, that is now where we are, where now our essence of communication that is transformative is to create businesses. And I like the title today that speaks about creating. And at that particular point, we realized that we needed to choose the sectors that we would operate in. So I'll paraphrase what we do at Gold Avenue Africa, which we currently are running. So we are in 3 sectors: energy, communication, and logistics. So I'll mention each of them. So energy, I remember when we were doing a lending house, we got to a place where we tried to fundraise from international financiers. And every time we were going to them, they kept telling us, we can't touch you, SK. And I'm wondering, why can't you touch us? And they kept saying, because you're too small. You're asking for too little. So we asked them, so what's the threshold? How do we know what's too little or too much? So they said, unless you're asking for $1 million, 100 million Kenyan, we can't touch you. We just had to go back to the drawing board. And going back to the drawing board, the song that was playing in my head all along, or in my spirit, was, I have made you too small in my eyes. Forgive me. You know that song?
Yeah.
Because you're thinking, you're looking for 50 million around there, and you're thinking it's big. But then you go to a financier and they tell you, I can't touch you. It's too small. Yeah. And that's the song that was the theme for us to rebuild and say, forgive us. Probably we are seeing too small. We have made it small in our eyes. And we, at that particular point, decided to visit Ministry of Energy and Petroleum. So we went to Ministry of Energy and Petroleum and we told them, it's a principle that says, never waste a good crisis because it carries the best opportunities. And therefore, we come to you appreciating that you're in a crisis. And the crisis you are is an energy crisis. You're looking for cheap power out of the expensive fossil fuel that you have been purchasing. And therefore, we are here. What would you do if we would sell you cheaper power? So Ministry of Energy, KPLC, KETRACO, ERC, they normally have a committee. And basically we were telling them, yeah, challenge us. We are willing to create cheaper power for you. So they said, if you can create the power, how much power would you create? So we said, we are willing to do 40 megawatts of power. And they said, if you can get it done, we're willing to give you a 20-year contract, non-revocable, non-negotiable, to sell power to KPLC. Then KPLC will sell it to everyone else. So there was only one problem. The problem was we just didn't have the money. So at that point, even when we were saying 40 megawatts, we didn't know how big 40 megawatts would be. So we sat down with experts and they were calculating and they told us, okay, your financiers told you that how much is less? Told them they said, unless we bite 100 million, they can't touch us. So they said, okay, the project that you're doing is $48 million. So yeah, We didn't know how big it was, but it didn't really matter because we're riding on a new principle. And the principle is, in the kingdom, you don't seek to own, you seek to access. Because what you own, you protect. What you access is protected. Yeah?
Okay, you need to come again. You need to rewind, huh?
Yeah. So we were running on the principle that says, in the kingdom, we don't seek to own, we seek to access. Because what you own, you protect. What you access is protected. And you see, the earth and everything therein belongs to the king anyway. So the best the king can give you is access. And that was comfort enough for us to be able to say, we can do this thing. It doesn't matter how much it is. So $48 million is around about 5 billion Kenyan. But it really doesn't matter whether we have it or not, as long as we can be able to access it. And that's the power. That's the power that I would want to get everyone to appreciate. That we are citizens in a kingdom. And in this kingdom, the king owns everything. And the best the king can do is give you access. And the thing is, if the king has sufficient to give you access, there is abundance, there is no scarcity. Yeah, there's more than enough. So I remember going to this conference as well, and the conference had a very interesting theme. And the theme of the conference was too much money chasing after too few deals. And that was very interesting. Too much money chasing after too few deals. That basically says that there's more than enough, but very few people are accessing it. So, and therefore, this is where now we started appreciating the concept of kingdom economics, because kingdom economics is how kingdoms run their economies, how kings run their economies, whether it's the United Kingdom, the French Kingdom, it doesn't really matter, but how kingdoms run the economy. So I'll paraphrase how kingdoms run the economy so that now you appreciate the perspective that we run with. A kingdom normally has a few things. Number one is a king. Number two is a domain. And number three is a mandate. Yeah. Every kingdom has king or queen, a domain, and a mandate. So the interesting thing is, in a kingdom, the king's word is law. Yeah. And in a kingdom, the king owns everything. So the compassion of the king creates the policies of the day. So if it's a good king, he will create policies that favor the people. Because the concept of a king is, you don't celebrate the king, you celebrate the deeds the king does to his people. Or you condemn the deeds the king does to his people. So when you look at it like that, then that gives people the power to choose a kingdom in which they can be citizens. Yeah. So looking at it like that is understanding that it's in the king's benefit for his people to shine so that he may get the glory. Yeah. I'll give you a quick example. In the United Kingdom, lords were being sent into territories. And when the lords were being sent into territories, they were meant to give reports. When a lord would go to give a report, the report used to say, the kingdom of the glory of the queen is present in the king in the territory. So, and how you used to defend whether the glory of the queen or the king is present in the kingdom. I'll give you an example of, let's take an example of Kenya. So someone is called to audit the work that the Lord had been doing in a territory that belongs to the queen. And the report, they would basically justify whether the glory of the Lord was in the kingdom. And they would say, we went to this territory called Kenya. And in this territory that we went, we found that the glory was evident. And evidence number one, we found people who are sitting in the sun, but they were taking tea. You get, that's evidence that the glory was present there. Number two, we saw these people. It didn't matter that it was hot in the day, but they were dressed in suits. So it's a proof that the glory was present. You get, they were calling the boot of the car and not the trunk of the car. They were, you get,
Yes.
and on and on and on.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So
Amazing.
that was something very interesting that kingdoms used to do. Now let's cross over from the king to the domain. Every domain has resources, and there's no kingdom without a domain. That's why it's called a king's domain, a kingdom. Yeah. And therefore, we have to appreciate that every domain has resources. And there are two domains. They say there's, if we take Africa as an example, there's Africa in the land and there's Africa on the land, because every territory has two domains. Africa in the land is the resources. Africa on the land is the people, their mindset, their creativity, their ability. So when you're looting a continent, you loot the continent, you loot Africa in the land, and you loot Africa on the land. Yeah.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah. So when you're looking at it like that, then you appreciate that the mind is the most explored continent. And therefore the mind is carrying so much resource. And that's why we are saying they cannot take your fruitfulness, because the domain on the land has more than enough. You cannot deplete the resources of the domain on the land. And that's why they say, if you want to take over a land, like in the Bible it says, you have to take over the strong man of the land. If you want to take the resources in the land, first take the resource on the land. So, and that's where Africa is coming from. And we need to emancipate people, just like Bob Marley said, emancipate them from mental slavery, because we can only remember the chains on their hands, but we forgot to talk about the chains in their minds. And therefore, the miracle of Africa is now being able to bring people to realize that there's Africa in the land and there's Africa on the land. And the days of taking Africa in the land are gone. No one is colonizing us anymore so that they take our pumpkins and fruits. No, now we're at the point of brain drain. And now people are coming to the place where we're draining our mindsets, we're draining our thinkers, our philosophers, our potential creatives. And that is something that we have to truly emancipate. And therefore, the last one is that every kingdom has a mandate. When we're looking at a king has a mandate, let me take a biblical example in this one. And a biblical example, therefore, would say the mandate was simple: subdue, take dominion, be fruitful, and multiply. Subdue basically means it was borrowed from the altar, because people used to go and put their flock on the altar. And when they start the fire, the flock runs away. And it's the same essence as well. Even as we put our minds to work, then when there's a crisis like COVID, we run away. Our minds just don't want to. So we have to subdue our minds with discipline. And the discipline ought to bring us to a place of knowing that it may not feel as we want it to feel, but there's a price to be paid for any success. Subdue, take dominion. Dominion is dominating. Be the best in that space that you are in. Dominance. Dominance is aggression. There are two kinds of aggression. Yeah. There's patience aggression. You're aggressively patient. Aggressively patient is where we appreciate that it is tough, but we will be aggressive to push it. But we appreciate as well that we are doing a long game. Yeah. We're building Africa a brick at a time. It won't take a day, but we will get there.
But it starts with the mindset, yeah, which is very, very, very important. And I think that's why your story will never end, because you can imagine all this while God was preparing you. It's almost like it was your preparation stage. Even as you saw the money right on your face and, could not sign the deal. Then you come back home and you're seeing all this mad opportunity when a lot of people could not see them. Yeah, even in the energy, I think it was a very daring move for you to first of all move into energy, having been a creative in the first place.
A creative, because there's a principle that says don't fall in love with a vehicle, fall in love with your why. Sometimes we fall in love with a vehicle, and there's a syndrome that is important for me to highlight as I explain that principle. There's a syndrome called bad faith syndrome. Bad faith syndrome is an interesting syndrome. And this is a syndrome where people believe that they only can do a particular thing. It's like someone saying, I was born to be a carpenter, and I cannot be a tailor because carpentry is what I was born to do. And that's bad faith syndrome, because then you box yourself. Then people keep calling you the carpenter, yet you can do something completely else. You have the ability to be dynamic, but you will not be, because you've locked yourself to this thing, especially right now where we are finding people are losing jobs, people are getting job pay cuts and all. And people are saying, but all I know is this. But that's bad faith syndrome, because this resides inside of you. And there's dynamism inside of you. You can be anything you choose to be. Yeah. And that's why the principle that says, if you say you can or you say you can't, either way you're right.
You're right. Yes, absolutely. And
Right.
SK, you bring a very strong point. Esther, I know Esther gave the background of when we did the Citizen Radio, interview, and we had about 800 people messages from different people in different counties. And believe it or not, about, I would say 80% of the people were, looking into either unemployed or seeking to move into entrepreneurship. And what you bring into, this bad faith syndrome, I think it's affecting us in a great way. And I don't know how you can actually give tips to someone listening out there, because I keep saying, and I know I'm not a psychologist, but I know this brain, this small gadget up here, it's expandable. And I think when it starts with the mindset, then you can see that you can actually move to a sector that you would never, ever have dreamt of. Yeah? Like right now, even in the banking sector, I'll tell you, and I'm sure you're aware that we are really encouraging customers and, people to look into spaces you've never looked into. Look, these guys that made ventilators in the Kenyatta University and other places. Sorry, my daughter is making a bit of noise. The guys who are innovating, perhaps it's not something they had dreamt about. Ventilators, who would have thought? And this is something, even the masks, people are making masks. Other people have moved into sector. I can see people moving into the agribusiness because, eating, people gotta eat, yeah? You can only fast for some time. So you brought a very important point. What is your word? What is your advice for someone who is starting out and, encouraging someone who might have to actually divest and move from a space, even an entrepreneur, a young entrepreneur, maybe that was perhaps in a space that is affected right now, that will have to move to a space that, a territory that he would never or she would never have thought about. And how did you even do it? It's very daring, eh?
Yes.
It's wisdom.
Yeah, I want to take up a philosophy that Socrates said. Socrates said, whoever teaches people how to die has taught them how to live. And basically what this principle means is teaching people how to face their fears, teaching people how to accept their failures, teaching people how to start all over again. And that's the person who will have taught everyone how to live. Because we get attached. We get to places where we are saying, but this is all I know. If this doesn't work, I'm done. but yet it's not true. Yeah, because you're a well that springs. You're a tree that is planted by the rivers. You can't drink a river and finish it. The river will drown you. There's literally so much within you that has to be explored. And whatever it is that we have has a place. We are the only ones who have to kill bad faith syndrome and say, I'm only a carpenter. I'm only a farmer. I'm only this, I'm only that. Because a scripture is written that says, I can do all things, not some things. Yeah, I can do all things.
Through
All
him.
means through Christ who strengthens.
Amen.
Exactly.
Yes.
So when for me, what I would be able to tell people is that it's okay to fail. Let's just learn how to fail well. And failing well is failing fast. Yeah. If it's not working, drop it. Yeah. If it's working, nurture it. Yeah. And it's okay to fail, because we don't want to be the kind of people who want to exhibit that we don't have issues. Want to be authentic. They say authentic is the new smart.
Exactly.
And if authentic is the new smart, then people want to see us bear our scars, bear our challenges, want to be able to, and yeah, I don't know, how do I tackle this? And that's the beauty of life. Just being able to appreciate. I tried this, it didn't work, let me try this. And I don't need to try it blindly if I can ask someone direction. So at this time, there's so many things that are coming up that are opportunities in times of crisis. When we look at crisis, we see that every crisis, every 100 years, we normally have a crisis. 100 years, like clockwork. It's always been happening. And now, in every 100 years, we realize that every 10 years there is a crisis. 10 years ago, there was a crisis in 2008. Before 2008, there was a dot-com bubble. So 2008, it was the subprime mortgage crisis.
Yep. I was there in the States.
Yeah.
You can ask me. That's a story of another day.
Another day. Yeah. So before that, we had the dot-com bubble. Before that, we had another bubble in the 80s. Before that, we had another bubble all the way up to the 1800s. Every 10 years. And this is something interesting that I want to highlight, that in every crisis, there's always a wealth transfer. In every crisis, always a wealth transfer. So think of it that every 10 years, we are being prepared for a crisis, but yet we've never prepared ourselves for this crisis. So, and we say never waste a good crisis again, because it carries the opportunities. This particular crisis that we are in, I'm telling you, we are standing on the golden age. This is the golden age. We will pray for a crisis like this for a long time. Who knows? Probably we'll never get such.
Yeah.
A crisis is a gold mine. If only we can see it as a gold mine. Yeah. Things have changed, but it's for the better. And remember, as I mentioned earlier when I started, about alternative education, is learning as things change. If we're learning as things change, we are adapting as things change. And if we have adaptability quotient, I'm telling you, a crisis is a miracle. And if it wasn't for a crisis, we wouldn't know Joseph. Crisis, we wouldn't know Samson. We wouldn't know Moses if it wasn't for a crisis. We wouldn't know Abraham Lincoln. We wouldn't know all these greats. We wouldn't know Napoleon on how his prowess came through out of a crisis. Leaders are born in crisis, and in a crisis, leaders have to be audible, visible. And this is the time for us to be audible and visible through our products. Whatever product it is that you're doing, be audible, be visible. So many people want to stay at home and nothing. But this is not the nothing. This is the time to be visible, because the noise has been, when everything is working, there's a lot of noise in an economy. And there's something, I know, being in Wall Street, you know this phrase that says, there's market noise and there's market color.
Love it. Yes.
So market noise is, they say, news is for the masses and terminals are for the classes. The reason why we say that is because news is noise and most news is manufactured.
Yep.
Because when you manufacture news, then you're able to inject fear or greed into a society. And every time fear or greed is injected into the human mind, they become irrational. Basically,
Right.
they don't think at that point.
Skelter. Yes.
And when they become irrational, then it becomes easy to manipulate them. And you see, we are being called to soundness of mind. And therefore, soundness of mind is being able to say, how do I differentiate between noise and color?
Color, yes.
Color is basically, where is the opportunity? Where is the money? So that we go there. And in this noise of COVID, there is color. If only we can still shut down the noise of how many people are collapsing, how many things are going wrong, that is easy to get. What is not easy to get is the voice that will tell you that there are opportunities in a crisis, that this is the golden age, that this is the time for us to be able to explore a transfer of wealth. So I'm very excited about this particular time.
Pineapple.
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah.
It's okay. Continue. SK, sorry, someone I think was unmuted. SK, I think your story we need and SK, I know I challenged you and we were talking the other day. You and I are writing books this year.
Yes.
Because your story need to be read by our little kids and generations to come. Because let me tell you, there's a lot that even I learn, and especially when you have a mindset where you are forever learning. I'm a student for life. That's my hashtag. And it's a choice. It's a choice. You've said it. During crisis is when leaders are born. And how are leaders born? They are open-minded. They don't follow the noise. They instead follow the color. So maybe because of the interest of time, would you allow a few questions? But I know you are still not done. I really, really would love you to paint a picture. This Gold Avenue, because
Yes.
we've had very beautiful things that you're doing. You're creating jobs. You already have hired a few, quite a bit of population, Kenyan population. So you're actually a true example of a job creator. You are creating solutions that are needed, solutions that are changing this nation and saving energy. Yeah. Then communication. There's communication. And the most exciting innovation that you've come up with, which this one I'm very excited. I've actually spoken in different places about it. The logistics. And look, right now we are in a lockdown. You can deliver our goods straight to our doorstep.
Yes, correct. So I can probably speak a little about that. So on energy, we have a long-term project and a mid-term project. So long-term is we are doing a 40 megawatt power plant in Makueni.
Okay.
We are still in the process. We are still dealing with government, getting all our approvals set, getting everything done. So we've secured financing for that, but we still have quite to do before we are able to roll out the project. Secondly, on that as well, we have another company in solar called Umeme City. And Umeme City is, we do rooftop solar. So we put solar on roofs for manufacturing plants and food processing plants. And basically we put it at our cost and then we sell them power, 20% cheaper than KPLC. So what we do is that at the end of the month, we bill them, we put a meter and bill them. Currently, we have so much demand for that to a point where now we are running out of capacity. There's so much demand greater than the capacity for us to supply. And therefore, that allows us now to open our doors to both local and global investors. so that now we'll be able to supply. Just in Nairobi alone, we have manufacturing plants worth, currently the pipeline that we have is worth about $15 million worth of pipeline. Looking for money to be able to do those projects. So you can imagine that it's so high because at a COVID period, people are looking to cut costs and they are willing to be able to lease such infrastructure from us. So you can imagine that goes on and on. And now going into logistics, we have a platform that currently we have been developing for the last 1 year. And this particular platform is called Avenue.
Awesome.
And the interesting about the platform is that it does both cab hailing and it does delivery services. So two in one. And that's something interesting. So we have in the platform riders who are doing deliveries, drivers who are doing cab hailing and deliveries. And the most interesting part is that we have a new category. We are calling them runners. So runners are on-foot delivery people. And on-foot delivery for this people who don't have an asset, meaning they don't have a bike and they don't have a car. But it's just a young guy with a phone and you can hail them. And you see in Nairobi CBD, bikes are not allowed. In Westlands, bikes are not allowed. In Upper Hill, bikes are not allowed. So those people need runners. And we are recruiting runners, and we are recruiting runners through different initiatives like yours that would have young people who they can recommend. We encourage churches to come forth and recommend young people that they know that are people that are prudent, that can get work done. So we have currently registration applications in the thousands. Cities. So we have application of about 2,000 drivers. We have about 1,000 riders. We have runners that we've been meeting with different organizations who can put them together. And the essence of this is for us to be able to get people have something to do at this time, get their expertise, their prowess, their fruitfulness to the ground, so that now these guys can be able to earn a living. Because when the last crisis, which was the 2008 crisis, happened, the interesting thing that happened was gig economy was born, and gig enterprises came up. And one of the gig enterprises especially in the US and in the UK, was food, cab hailing, those delivery, and people started doing a lot of these things where someone can go to class, come out of class, put their app on, carry a few people, do a few deliveries. And that is something that we will see a lot right now, even in Africa, where people will now start experiencing a gig economy, putting people to work. And the hero of this post-COVID scenario will be the people who will come together to create employment. Part of those people.
Awesome.
Yeah.
SK, it really caught my eye, the runners option, because we have other cabs that are out there, but this is actually your distinguishing factor. Because as you know, somebody can even start right now. And that is what I keep telling our young people. Yes, you're at home, but abroad they say we are the best runners as long as you're from Kenya. I know that's on a lighter note, but this is somewhere you can start where you are. And for me, I must salute to you because you are creating, you're just using we call it software, the software God has given you. You just put your thoughts together. And I think the most brilliant thing about, the innovations you're coming up with, somebody could have thought about it. I could have thought about it. Probably I did not. But you just sat down with your team and thought about this can be a solution. And bang, right there. Because right now, most people are at home, and even in the future, you can imagine, Westlands to town. Somebody can walk, and actually you're keeping fit, and you're also providing a solution, and you're delivering safely. Really, boils down to the
Facilities.
mindset. Again, I cannot emphasize this. The mindset, I think I was scrolling up the comment section and someone was talking about, it's like mind slavery, you know? It's all starts with the mind, yeah? A lot of us, I think we are still stuck. I can't do this, you know, I couldn't do this, or I'll wait for the cleaning job, perhaps if I'm a cleaner, you know, but you still can do this. So this is amazing.
Yes.
Yeah, for the interest of time, I'm really, and I'm so sorry to rush you a bit at the very end. Perhaps you can tell us what are the opportunities, both from an entrepreneurship angle, and even for people who would want to come in as, you know, to be the runners and the, you know, the cab drivers. Perhaps let me give an example. Somebody had a vehicle sitting at home and maybe their sector was a restaurant and it was shut down, or a factory that was shut down. Are there opportunities there for people to collaborate with the organization, you know, to bring out this beautiful Kenyan story and create jobs?
Correct. Yeah. So currently, we currently have been doing recruitment of all the categories,
Okay.
drivers,
Okay.
riders, and runners. So there are people who are calling in, and they have probably 2 cars or 1 car as a family, and in
Awesome.
this COVID situation, they are saying, okay, I have a car, but I would want you to find a driver for us, and we are able to link them with the drivers that are applying currently. So
Awesome.
the drivers who have especially good conduct, certificate of good conduct, we are doing KYC on them, quite
Awesome.
thorough.
I'm glad you're doing that. I'm glad you're doing that.
Yeah, so for all of them, we're making sure that at least they have a certificate of good conduct. Now, plus the other regular things like a valid license, things like that.
Awesome.
The other thing, we are getting people as well saying that can I buy a bike or 2 and bring it in, and you find me a rider. So we have a lot of riders as well without bikes, and that's amazing.
Awesome.
The other thing, people are asking, how do runners participate? So for runners, we want them as well to have someone to recommend them.
Awesome.
Like an institution to recommend them, a church to recommend them, a mentor, someone who can tell us, we know this person. They won't get a counsel and just run off.
SK, you bring a very valid point, because sometimes you'll find that, you know, it's a very trying times, and you might give somebody a parcel to bring to my office and they just duck to whatever. So I like that you're doing that, because it's the foundation of your organization and even of good service. So it's very important.
Asante sana. So currently we are recruiting heavily. We hoped that we would be able to open our doors for users already, but since we have such a long list of people who are applying, but we are trying to vet them just to make sure that we have people who can be trusted. We don't want issues where you have this crazy things happening in a cab or with a biker or a runner. We just want to make sure that we do it right, so that people may know us as that safe option, that option that didn't just take everyone in, but took time to sit down with people and just make sure that they're people of character.
Excellent.
And that's important to us. So
Awesome.
then we've had to push now our consumer launch to coming week. So coming week now, we officially open it up for everyone now to be able to start now hailing the cabs, rides, using and enjoying this particular service.
I think I'll be your first customer, I hope.
Yeah, we can't really. The other thing that we are doing that we would want to encourage people is that we are now recruiting vendors. So vendors are very important. So vendors are people with, we know the traditional ones, someone with a shop, someone with a chemist, someone with a supermarket. But now there's a new breed of vendors, people who are selling now online. Yeah, Instagram vendors, Facebook vendors, people who are selling masks, shoes, jackets, all these guys. And the intention is for us to be able to partner with a vendor. So when we meet a vendor, let's assume he's someone who's selling shoes. And now we become their delivery support. So we create promotional material for them. We create a poster for them. We put their number and we put their pay bill. And then they can be able to push it on their social media platforms and WhatsApp. And then we are their backend delivery support, where they can get delivery from the whole spectrum. So it is important to mention that there as well, we've started recruiting truck drivers on the platform. Yeah, so that will be phase. Phase 2 will be truck drivers, pickups, and ambulances.
Wow, awesome. Amazing, SK. I mean, it's brilliant innovation right there, because, sometimes we don't get to think of the distribution channels, and even how, I love that you're, going to the ground, yeah? Because it's a good way to also empower these vendors that might not even have the time. So, and one of the very important, I think, lesson that we've learned during this crisis is that collaboration. You saw the first week, I think Java and, Java was it Java and this, they are called what, Glovo, many restaurants are trying to partner, just to do the delivery to their doorstep.
Even supermarkets.
And even supermarkets have done that. Twiga was another example. You've seen how they're delivering your vegetables to the house, and they just partnered with Sandy. So really, this is a very good time to be alive. Good time to put our thinking caps on and just innovate and change the mindset. We keep talking about Jack Ma, and honestly, the reason we are doing these sessions, personally, on Tuesday, I'll block everything. I'm sure you can hear my daughter coming round, and But the thing is, if we can just spur 3 people to become the next biggest innovator, the next biggest SK Blue, Gold Avenue Africa. That is just, our work is done. And then for me personally, it's our way of giving back to our economy, because perhaps some of us didn't have this kind of mentorship. We did not even have these forums available to us. And those days, I don't know, SK, I ever shared with you my story that my parents, I mean, trust me, you are just go get good grades, go get jobs. We didn't have these forums, honestly. So the COVID has equalized this world. The world has been, it's become a global village, and learning actually, and the mindset, we really have to change it. So thank you, SK. I feel like I want to allow you to just take a few more questions. I don't know if I can give you a water break as I invite Esther to just maybe pick a few questions from the audience so that we don't overstay. Esther, are you there?
Thank you, Maggie. Thank you. I am here listening to SK, and of course not daring to move because I don't want to miss any word. Now I want to allow Shalom Makrin, kindly ask your question. Your hand was up first.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. Now, I had got an opportunity to ask this question last week, and due to the interest of time, we were not able to answer it. It's on the position of partnerships. There's a lot of hullabaloo going around about how Africa as a continent is not yet equipped insofar as making partnerships or building partnerships for longevity. It's like we always have a hit and run model insofar as partnerships are concerned. And so you need to do so many things, and you cannot achieve it unless you partner, unless you collaborate. But yet when you go out into the industry, there's a lot of drama that comes with it. So seeing as how SK, who is also my mentor, is an innovator, I would want to know how exactly can we position ourselves to be able to do great things in partnerships without experiencing heartaches and heartbreaks and a lot of drama. Thank you.
Great question. SK, go ahead.
Yeah. Thank you, Shalom, for the question. Last week when you asked the question, I said partnership was borrowed from a concept. There's nothing really new under the sun. So the concept of partnership was borrowed from ancient history. And in ancient history, what we have to appreciate is that it came from kings. So kings had to be able to run a city or a kingdom. But for you to run the kingdom, you first have to protect the kingdom. Otherwise, you'll be overthrown by another king. So the first thing was, the only way you win against another king was basically to have a three-tier, let me say a pyramid or triangle, or yeah, so three pillars that would identify with this. So pillar number one was the king. The king had to be a decisive king. The king had to be a king who's open-minded. The king had to be a king who is willing to be advised. So the king was number one. The second thing that the king needed was unfair advantage. Unfair advantage was important because a king needed something more than the other king has. Every king had advisors, every king was wise, every king was decisive, every king had an army and all those things. So you are flatlined. All kings were the same king, technically. So a king needed something extra from the other king. And therefore the king needed to get a prophet. And the prophet, the essence of the prophet was to tell the king something that the other king does not know. Yeah. And that is unfair when you look at it. When the prophet tells the king that it will rain tomorrow and no one knows that it will rain tomorrow, even the other king, then you can get that things can get a bit unfair. When the prophet tells the king, God has given you the battle tomorrow, or don't go to battle because you will lose. That's unfair advantage. So the prophet was able to advise the king, and the king, through the unfair advantage or the unfair advice, was able to create an enabling environment. And the person who built an enabling environment would attract merchants. So the third piece was the merchants. And the merchants were the people who came in to help build infrastructure. A king's legacy was impossible unless he encapsulated it in an infrastructure. He needed to fortify his city. He needed to create roads. He needed to purify the water. He needed to create learning institutions. He needed to uphold values, morals, and all these things cannot be held in a vacuum. All these things are held in an ecosystem, which is an infrastructure that a kingdom must have. So when we are looking at partnership, therefore, you have to realize that one king needed a prophet and a merchant. So let's bring it into our state. And therefore, every individual can be three things at any time. You can be a king, and there are people who are advising you, and that gives you an unfair advantage. The other thing is that you can be a king and other people are coming into your life as merchants. Some of the merchants that come into our lives are investors. One of the greatest joys that we have come to learn as a business is the participation of investors. And investors participate only if the environment is enabling. And how the environment be enabling unless you have sound advice and sound counsel that comes to you. As individuals, we have two sets of sound counsel. Number one is humans. Humans can be physical humans, humans in books, humans in recordings, humans in all these learnings that we can get from humans, whether they are alive or not, still exists. And therefore, the second one is for believers is the Holy Spirit. the Holy Spirit ordering your steps. It's unfair. Think of it that you're going to business head to head with another business person, and yet your steps are ordered. It's impossible for someone to go against such an unfair. That's why they say favor is unfair. And now looking at partnership, therefore we borrow it from that ancient history. And partnership from that point of view used to be called convergence. So when convergence happens, they say, there is always a revolution. There is no revolution that is done outside a convergence. In that time, the convergence was king, prophet, merchant. In our time, we as well have to realize that we cannot do it on our own.
Wonderful.
So a quick statement. Yeah. So I meet this gentleman and he tells me the difference between our generation, so an older gentleman, our generation and you as SK, is that your generation has the ability to do more than we did in 50 years, within 5 years. The reason why they won't is because your generation works in silos and our generation worked in convergence. That just blew my mind. Yeah. So I hope it sheds light into
that is beautiful. And it would be great for us to have actually taken note that maybe as we start next week, as you teach us how to face our giants, we would like to start on that angle of how to break the silos. We have two other questions, which I will give you, SK. Once they are asked, please take a minute, because we will have a very hard stop at 21:30, just to respect people's time and to allow people to go and have dinner. So Billionaire Brian, you have 30 seconds to ask your question so that SK can answer it very quickly.
All right, thank you so much. Yes, so my question is to SK and to Margaret. What are your top 3 books that you have read so far that have shifted your mindset and awakened you to your potential? Thank you.
Awesome. I think SK, let me go quickly.
Margaret, can we take the second question? Then we give
sure.
you an opportunity to just finish. Then
no problem. Okay, another question.
Kindly.
Hello?
Abraham, go ahead.
Hi.
Yes, so my question is on private equity, which I know, SK, you've been talking about for a while now, and we've been chatting about it with you. So it's good to have you here and to hear the story and stuff like that. So good to see you. So private equity, my question really is, what is the business side of it? As a private equity firm, whether it's crowdsourcing or any other way of pulling in investors, what is the business side? How do you actually make the money? How do you actually make the money so that as somebody who is trying to get into that field, we've talked about Rich City Africa, me and you, and so as somebody trying to get into that field, it's good to understand bringing people together, but also I think it's important to understand the business side of it, and also to make sure that the margins are correct, the interests are correct, and the fees, the management fees are correct. So how do you come to that point where you're looking at your market space, you're looking at the environment that you're working in? I'm in Zambia currently. So for me, for example, looking at the Zambia context, and then coming up with fees and a way to actually generate the income as a private equity firm. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Abraham. I will allow Maggie, you take it first, and I'm timing you for 1 minute so that we can give SK 2 minutes so that we do that hard stop at 21:30. Kindly. Maggie?
Thank you, Esther. You're so kind. Let SK go first on the private equity, then we'll just list the book when I'm at the end. Is that okay?
Thank you. All right.
All right. Awesome.
SK, go ahead.
All right, SK.
Asante. Thank you, BDP. It's good to see you from Zambia. And I want to talk about private equity. So private equity, I want to make it as simple as possible so that it doesn't sound like jargon. Private equity is a class. Investment has different classes. And like real estate has a class called rate. Different classes are there, but private equity is interesting. And this is why. Private equity is where you take private capital into a private institution. So in fundraising, there's public resources and there's private resources. Yeah. In our Kenyan law, I don't know whether it's the same thing in Zambia. Private resources are called sophisticated investors. And public in Kenya, public is anyone who invests resources below 100,000 Kenyan, which is $1,000. In the US, it's below anyone who invests below $1 million. So in different places, they're different. And therefore, the essence of private equity now in the simplest way is to know that the job of a private equity firm is to two ways. There are people who are deal source. They look for deals. So someone has started a startup, then you get that deal, and the idea is to grow it. The second one is deal generate. So there are two kinds of private equity, some that deal generate and some that deal source. So for us, we are deal generators. We generate the deals ourselves, by choice. But the essence of a private equity firm is to be able to generate a deal or source a deal. Then if it were a cow, the idea is to fatten the cow. Fatten the cow as much as possible. Let's say you had a cow and the cow, you sourced it from someone and the cow was 10 kgs. And now the idea of private equity is there is a buyer. You travel from the future. You start from the end. It's not like a regular business where you start then go to the end. In private equity, you start from the end. So you have a buyer who's saying, when you have a cow that is 80 kgs, call me, I'll buy it. And now as private equity, you sourced this cow that is 10 kg. So your sole job is to fatten this cow and make sure it gets to 90 kgs so that you sell it to a strategic buyer. So that's the journey of private equity. And when you sell it to a strategic buyer, two things. You may sell the cow for the buyer to go with it, or you may sell the cow to the buyer and still retain the right to manage the cow. Yeah? So I hope I'm making it as simple as possible, Maggie.
Yes.
So
in layman terms.
Yeah. In layman terms. So private equity is the business of either starting with a small cow or getting a cow somewhere. You can get Shalom, let's say, or someone, a David or someone who has a small calf, and you buy it. The idea is to buy low and sell high. The 10 kg cow, probably you bought it for 2,000 shillings. But the 90 kg buyer is saying, if you get me a 90 kg cow, I'll buy it for $1 million bob. That's private equity. So how do you do that? If you're generating a deal, before you generate the deal, fatten to the point of sale, then that's where you need private investors. Private investors help you to start the process, to buy the calf, then fatten the calf. So the question is, how do you survive before you sell the calf? Let's assume it's just a 10 kg cow that gives little milk. The idea is local investors will come in, help you to fatten it, but you will share the milk. But you see, it looks like the business of your business is selling milk. But in true sense, the business of your business is the business inside the business, which is fattening a cow so that you sell it to a bigger buyer and be able to manage the cow at the same time. So you mentioned fees. So there's a fee to when you sell, you see where the money is. But if you the cow that you sell, then there is a management fee. So speaking of portfolios, you can start or acquire a portfolio. Local investors will help you to develop that portfolio to a point of scalability. At scalability, foreign investors will come with bigger money. Then that you'll be able now to offload it. I'll take an example of Makueni Power Company, the one that we have been doing. Local investors. So local investors were able now to buy the land, do the feasibility study, do all these important things that needed to be done, do NEMA, do all that from a local point. Then we were able now to present a fattened cow. In investment, they call it bankability. When you reach bankability, your cow is at the right size to be bought. And that allowed us now to sit down with foreign investors. And they were able to commit to that amount purely because as well have another buyer. So everyone has a buyer. Even them, they have another buyer. They want to buy a 90 kg cow because they have someone else who wants to buy a 300 kg cow. So they'll come, fatten it as well. In 7 years, they'll sell it to someone else. And that's why a business can start as 3 shops. One of the businesses, let me give Java as an example, started as small shops, 5 shops, independent with private money. Then a private equity called ECP Capital came in and put $25 million. And they fattened it for 5 years. And they sold it to another private equity company called Abraj Group for $115 million.
Amazing.
Now is making it a regional business so that now they sell it to another buyer, who knows, probably for $1 billion, and on and on and on until you find it at the New York Stock Exchange. Then the game is over. I hope I've shed light.
Thank you.
Simplest way.
Thank you. Just give us your 3 books that you have read as you finish, and so that Maggie can give us her 3 books, then we close the session.
So 3 books I would give. I would say the first book I would recommend is The Richest Man in Babylon. It's a simple book. It's a narrative. It's a story. The second book is Think and Grow Rich. That's an interesting book. And the third book is the Bible. That's a very interesting one. And now look at it from a point of economics. Relook at everything now from economics, and you'd find crazy economical concepts in the Bible. And for now, those are the 3 ones that I would highlight without a doubt.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. I shall definitely start reading the Bible with an economic eye. Maggie,
Yes.
your 3 books, kindly.
Very quickly, it's Sunny Bindra. You know, he talks about the big deal, the bigger deal.
Okay.
And then there's, I love this one, The Leader with No Title. I think all of you have read it, Sharma.
Yes.
And I am a fan of Steve Jobs. I'm reading the bio. It's called his bio, yeah?
Yes.
And then, of course, the Bible. This year I've dared myself to read systematically the Bible. So yeah, the wisdom, especially the Proverbs chapter, is amazing.
Fantastic. Thank you, both of you, very, very much. I have no words to thank you. So for me, really, this is to say thank you. From my side, I will invite Nabutola to give a vote of thanks officially to SK and to Maggie. But from me and on behalf of the magnificent mentors and eMentoring Africa, it's a big thank you to all of you, our dear audience, for making it today, for hanging in there. 60 of us are still here. We promise that this recording will be shared with you in a couple of days after we have removed the chaff. Please take time to listen and to share with others, and keep inviting your friends to the parlor. SK, thank you for agreeing to come to be with us again on Tuesday. But don't forget that every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, we have other fantastic speakers and mentors to share with us. I thank you. May God bless you. Keep safe. and we shall see you again. Right now, I want to invite Nabutola to kindly give us closing remarks for 2 seconds, then we call it a night. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thank you, Esther. I just need 1 second and it's gone. Really, I cannot add anything else and spoil, because whatever I'll say will not make it better. SK and Maggie for inviting you. Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for making us richer in spirit, richer in heart. Is my heart, my second already gone? Thank you very much and have a good night.